In the spring of 1944, the Solomon Sea wasn't a theater of war. It was a slaughterhouse with wings. Rabaul, the Japanese fortress on New Britain, squatted like a hornet's nest, its airfields vomiting squadrons of A6M-0s into the dawn. These were the fighters that had carved Japan's early victories from the blood of Pearl Harbor and Wake Island. Light, agile, with a turn radius that could loop a man inside his own shadow. At low altitudes, below 15,000 feet, they owned the sky. American pilots called it the zero trap. Dive in too fast and you'd overshoot, turn too tight and they'd carve your tail off before you blinked. The U.S. Navy's answer was the F-4U Corsair. A beast of a plane, 2,000 horsepower churning from a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, prop tips blurring at 670 miles per hour in a dive. It had speed, it had climb. But firepower? That was the gap. The standard armament, 650 caliber Browning M2 machine guns in the wings, could chew through fabric and wood, but the Zero's pilots had learned. They hugged the deck, weaved through flak bursts, and closed to knife range where armor plate on their engine cowlings shrugged off the storm. A Corsair pilot might empty a belt into a Zero's fuselage, watch the rounds spark and ricochet, and still see the enemy banking hard, cannons spitting 20mm shells that punched clean through aluminum like paper. One man saw the math of it clearer than most. Lieutenant Raymond Mercer, Ray to the few who survived long enough to use it, was 28, with the lean frame of a test pilot who'd wrung every knot out of Navy prototypes back at Patuxent River. His hair was cropped close, eyes the color of gunmetal, always scanning, calculating stresses and vectors, even in the mess hall. Mercer had flown the early Corsairs off the line, logged hours tweaking cowl flaps and superchargers, until the bird sang true. But combat had a way of rewriting specs. By April, he'd nursed 3 kills back to the Essex, each one a grind of tracer lines that bent but didn't break the enemy. Mercer wasn't reckless. He was precise. The war's equation, he'd mutter to his wingmen, sketching diagrams on napkins stained with coffee and engine grease. Force over time, mass times acceleration. The Zeros got our number because we fire slow. 6 guns, 800 rounds a minute total, but spread across wings that flex in a turn. Half your shots miss the mark before they leave the barrel. He believed in the firepower gap, the delta between what a plane could carry and what it needed to end a dogfight in seconds, not minutes. Reloading midair wasn't an option, jams weren't forgiven, and hesitation, that was a eulogy. His squadron, VMF-2 Fort, the Black Sheep, though they'd lost that nickname to a Hollywood polish, operated off the Essex, a flat top churning through the Bismarck Sea like a steel island adrift. Mornings started with the clank of arrestor hooks on deck, the hiss of steam catapults slinging birds into the blue. Afternoons dissolved into briefings. Wind speeds, Zero patrol patterns, the latest on Rabaul's 300-foot radar towers that lit up incoming raids like fireflies in a jar. Evenings, if you made it back, were for whiskey in tin cups and stories that ended with, and then the bastard dove. On April 14th, the sky over Rabaul was glass clear, visibility 20 miles, ceiling unlimited. Mercer led green flight, 4 Corsairs, engines idling hot on the Essex's deck. His wingman was Lieutenant Tom Teagan, callsign Bluff, a lanky kid from Boston with a grin that could disarm a deckhand and a habit of betting cigarettes on who splashed first. Teagan had Mercer's back since Espiritu Santo, the two of them threading through monsoons like they'd been born in the cockpit. Bluff's got the luck, Mercer thought as the launch officer's flag snapped down. Guy's guns jam once a week, and he still comes home laughing. The mission was escort. 12 dauntless dive bombers pounding Rabaul's fuel dumps, with green flight as top cover. Climb out was textbook. Corsairs gulping blue sky, contrails feathering at 18,000 feet. Then the radar pickets crackled. Bandits, Angels 5 bearing 270. Zeros, low and fast, 20 of them peeling off the deck like sharks scenting blood. The bombers tightened formation, bellies heavy with 1,000-pounders. Mercer's voice cut the radio static. Green flight, brake left, throttle to military. Tally 9, 12 o'clock low. The merge hit like a hammer. Zeros swarmed the bombers, 20mm cannons winking orange in the sun. A Dauntless staggered, trailing black smoke, its port wing folding under a direct hit. Mercer yanked stick, Corsair's gull wings biting air as he dove into the furball. His 50s thundered, brap brap brap, stitching a Zero's cowl, rounds pinging off the armored glass. The enemy jinked hard, a ballet of ailerons and rudder that left Mercer's tracers clawing empty sky. Too slow, he cursed. Always too damn slow. Tegan was on his 3, matching the turn. Ray, I've got the lead. Fox 3, Bluff's guns barked. A full deflection shot that raked the Zero's belly. Fabric shredded, but the engine kept turning. The Zero snap-rolled, cannons traversing. Tegan anticipated, hauled back on the stick, but his port guns stuttered. Click whir, jam. A belt had twisted in the feed, common as salt water in the humid air. Shit, guns out. Covering fire, Ray. Mercer banked hard, lining up the shot. His burst caught the Zero's tail, splintering bamboo spars, but the pilot held formation. 3 Zeros converged now, a classic pincer, 1 high, 2 low, bracketing Tegan's 6. Bluff broke right, Corsair groaning under 5 Gs, but the low bird had the angle. Its 20mm shells walked up the fuselage, thunk thunk thunk, punching through the cockpit sill. Tegan's voice spiked over the radio. Taking hits, mayday mayday, Ray, get him off me. Mercer firewalled the throttle, Corsair surging forward at 400 knots. He triggered his guns, a 10-second storm that converged on the trailing Zero. Rounds hammered home, igniting the fuel tank in a bloom of orange. The plane cartwheeled, debris fountaining into the sea below. But the leader had Tegan dead. Bluff's engine coughed, oil streaking the canopy. Ejecting, Ray, tell Mary. Static swallowed the rest. The Zero's burst found its mark. Tegan's Corsair erupted in a chain of fireballs, wings shearing off as the fuel lines lit. Chunks of aluminum rained into the waves, a parachute blooming too late, snagged in the inferno. Mercer circled once, tight as his gut, scanning the smoke for any sign. Nothing. Just the endless blue, indifferent. Green lead, RTB, mission scrubbed. His voice was flat, but the squadron heard the fracture. 2 bombers down, Tegan gone. The Zeros melted back to Rabaul, unscathed. Back on the Essex, the deck crew swarmed Mercer's bird like ants on a carcass. He climbed down the ladder, flight suit soaked, helmet tucked under arm. The air stank of arrested oil and burnt rubber from the barrier nets. Tegan's spot waited empty, chalk still in place, prop shadows swaying in the breeze. Mercer stood there, fists clenched until the knuckles bleached. Commander Alan Bixby found him in the ready room, charts pinned to bulkheads showing Zero approach vectors. Bixby was 42, salt and pepper mustache framing a face etched by Tarawa. He clapped Mercer's shoulder, hard like testing a weld. He was a good man, Ray. Best damn wingman you could have asked for. Mercer shrugged it off, eyes on the diagram. Wasn't luck, sir. Was the guns. Bluffs jammed, standard feed issue, humidity warps the links. By the time he cleared it, those bastards had him bracketed. 650s aren't cutting it against their weave. We need punch, real punch. 20mm cannons, twin mount, nose install. Concentrated fire, no wing flex diluting the pattern. Bixby lit a Chesterfield, smoke curling toward the overhead vents. Heard it before, Lieutenant. Ordnance shot it down last month. Recoil on a Hispano 20mm, synchronized pair, would torque the nose gear off the mounts. Frame stress alone could shear the longerons. You're talking 1,200 foot-pounds per shot, cyclic rate 600 rounds a minute. The Corsair's built for 50s, not howitzers. Then reinforce it, Mercer pressed, voice low but edged. Salvage struts from a gutted Mitchell. Realign the trunnions forward of the firewall. I've run the numbers. Dynamic load under 4 Gs if we dampen with hydraulic buffers. 1 plane, sir. Let me prove it. Bixby exhaled slow, tapping ash into a tray. Ray, you're the best stick in the squadron, but it's not insubordination. It's suicide. Navy says no, physics says no, and after today, I say bury it, for bluff. Mercer held the commander's gaze, the room's hum of fans the only sound. Bury it? Like we buried him? Tegan's laugh echoed in his head, the one from last night's poker game, Bluff folding a full house with a wink. Not today, he nodded once, crisp. Understood, sir. But as Bixby left, Mercer stayed, tracing the diagram's lines with a finger scarred from wrench turns. The firepower gap wasn't numbers. It was an empty chair, a widow's telegram, the sea claiming another without a fight. They won't build it. Fine. He crumpled the napkin sketch, then smoothed it flat. I'll build it myself. The Essex slept uneasy that night, her guts alive with the pulse of pumps and fans. But in the forward hangar, where Corsairs huddled like grounded predators, sleep was a luxury Mercer couldn't afford. He'd waited until the last deck watch cleared, until the clatter of mess trays faded to snores in the berthing compartments. Tegan's death wasn't a statistic. It was a torque wrench twisting in his ribs, 650s. Jammed on the pull, gone. The napkin diagram burned in his pocket, creased lines mapping a heresy. Twin Hispano-Suiza 20mm cannons, Spanish fire breathers, salvaged from a wrecked P-38 Lightning crate in the spares locker. 140-grain shells at 2,800 feet per second. Cyclic rate pushing 700 rounds a minute if you sync the drums right. Concentrated in the nose, no wing convergence to scatter the pattern. It would turn a zero into confetti before the pilot could radio Baka. But theory was cheap. Reality waited in the shadows, jaws wide. Mercer crossed to his bird. Bureau number 2447, a Corsair with a fresh prop scar from last week's carrier trap. The cowling hung open, engine cowl flaps splayed like flayed skin. He set the toolbox down with a metallic thunk, the sound swallowed by the sea's murmur through the vents. One night, get it in, get it true. Dawn briefings at 0500. He didn't hear the footsteps until they were close, soft, deliberate, like a man who'd learned to ghost through boiler rooms. Chief Ordnanceman Saul Peterson emerged from the gloom, wiping calloused hands on a rag that smelled of JP4 and regret. Wrench, as the deck apes called him, was 35, built like a bulkhead with a face mapped by shrapnel from Guadalcanal. He'd tuned Mercer's guns since the squadron formed, coaxing Brownings back from salt corrosion with a prayer and a file. Knew you'd be here, Lieutenant. Saw you sketching that devil in the ready room. Ordnance log says no to cannons, says the mounts'll vibrate the firewall to scrap. Mercer didn't flinch, just popped the toolbox latches. Wrenches gleamed under the light, arrayed like surgical tools. Logs wrong, Chief? Or scared? Help me or get out. Peterson eyed the crate Mercer dragged from the corner. A splintered pine box stamped Hispano M2 defective, pulled from a B-25 wreck towed aboard last week. The chief cracked the lid, revealing 2 matte black barrels, breeches scarred from test fires, ammo drums dented but full. These ain't defective, they're orphans. Navy wrote 'em off after a feed jam at 10,000. Recoil's a mule kick, 1,200 pounds per round, doubled up. You sink 'em wrong, and the flash hider'll melt the cowl rings. He paused, rag twisting in his fist. Bluff spots cold up top. This for him? Mercer met his gaze, the air thick with oil and unspoken loss. For all of them. For the next one who doesn't come back. Hand me the torque wrench. 80 foot-pounds on the trunnions. They worked in the witching hour's hush, tools clinking like Morse code. Mercer chalked the fuselage centerline, a white scar from prop hub to exhaust stacks. Peterson unbolted the nose gear doors, exposing the forward bay, a nest of wiring and hydraulic lines snaking like veins. The first cut came hard. Mercer's torch hissed to life, blue flame kissing aluminum skin. Sparks showered, dancing on the deck like fireflies in hell. He carved a relief slot for the cannon breeches, 18 inches forward of the firewall, angling the barrels 0.5 degrees convergent to sink at 300 yards. Sweat beaded on his brow, not from heat but the math. 1 millimeter off, and the shells kissed the prop arc. Goodbye, teeth. Peterson fed the guns in from below, grunting as he wrestled the 450-pound assembly past struts, like birthing a breech calf. Hold her steady, trunnion pins next. Mercer braced the mount, muscles corded under his khakis, while the chief drove the locating pins home, clank, clank, each blow echoing the hammer of fate. They welded braces from B-25 struts, scavenged steel I-beams gusseted to the longerons, torqued to 120 foot-pounds. Recoil buffers next. Hydraulic pistons scavenged from a damaged tailwheel assembly, plumbed in line to absorb the kick. Mercer traced the feed lines by hand, brass cartridges gleaming in the half-light, 60-round drums nested in the wing roots. Hours blurred, 0200. The weld beads glowed cherry red, cooling to brittle silver. Peterson smeared grease on the recoil springs, thick as tar. She's heavy now, Ray. Center of gravity shifted 2 inches forward. You'll porpoise on takeoff, nosedives like a duck. Trim tabs'll compensate, Mercer grunted, ratcheting the final bolt. His hands shook, not fear, fatigue, the skin raw from metal bite. Holds at 4G static. But fire it? He stepped back, wiping his face with a forearm streaked black. The Corsair loomed altered, nose bulbous with the twin muzzles protruding like fangs. The shredder? The thought came unbidden. Fits. Peterson lit a lucky, the flare blooming shadows on bulkheads. Test it groundbound first, dry fire, then live. But if she twists, he trailed off, flicking ash into a drip pan. Command finds out, it's my ass on the line too. Court says unauthorized mod, we're both scrubbing decks till 46. Mercer clapped his shoulder, grip firm. Your ass, my wings, worth it. They dragged the bird to the blast deflector at the hangar's aft end, away from the parked helldivers. Peterson jury-rigged a ground power unit, cables snaking to the battery bus. Mercer climbed the wing walk, settling into the cockpit, a familiar cage now laced with new smells, fresh weld and gun oil. The stick felt heavier, instruments clustered under the gun sight now framing twin bores. He flipped the arming switches, click, and keyed the interphone. Ready wrench, dry cycle first. Peterson's voice crackled from the deck. Clear. Firing. Mercer squeezed the trigger. The breeches cycled, wump, empty drums spinning with a metallic whine. Vibration hummed through the frame, a low-frequency buzz that rattled the throttle quadrant. The cockpit glass flexed, a hairline crack spidering from the lower corner. Mercer released, breath held, holds. Cycle clean, low drums. Peterson slapped in the ammo cans, 120 rounds total, enough for 3 seconds of hell. He retreated behind the blast shield, a sheet of corrugated tin propped on sawhorses. Live fire, one burst, eyes sharp. Mercer gripped the stick, palms slick, for bluff, for the gap. The carrier's deck tilted 5 degrees to starboard, a reminder of the sea's indifference. He thumbed the safety off, aligned the nose on a sandbag backstop 50 feet out, ordnance sand packed tight, meant to catch 50 cal strays. Firing. The world recoiled first. Twin thunderclaps merged into one apocalyptic boom, shells erupting at 1,400 feet per second. The nose bucked upward 10 degrees, torque twisting the airframe like a wrung rag. Mercer slammed the stick forward, boots jamming the rudder pedals to counter the yaw. The cockpit shook, gauges blurring, altimeter spinning wild as if in a dive. A hydraulic line ruptured with a hiss, fluid spraying the panel in a black arc. The deck crew's ghost stories flooded back, test pilots at Pax River losing birds to prop wash alone, tearing apart, right now, 2 seconds. That's all he gave it, 120 rounds expended in a blink, the muzzles flashing white hot. Sandbags disintegrated, shreds of burlap and silica exploding backward in a rooster tail. The blast wave rattled the hangar doors, a pressure pulse that popped Peterson's ears. Mercer released the trigger, the sudden silence deafening. The Corsair groaned, settling on her gear with a metallic creak, longerons flexing like whale ribs under strain. Smoke curled from the vents, acrid with cordite and scorched paint. A rivet popped somewhere in the nose, pinging to the deck. Peterson emerged, face ashen, rag forgotten. Jesus, Ray, that wasn't a gun. That was a broadside. He circled the bird, fingers probing the fuselage. Dents spidered the cowl, a weld seam weeping stress cracks. The cockpit glass was a mosaic now, held by will alone. She took it. Barely. But fly that? 1 turn at 4 Gs and the mount's sheer. You're betting your neck on prayers. Mercer vaulted down, legs steady despite the adrenaline crash. He knelt by the nose, tracing a fresh buckle in the skin, half-inch deep like a shark's bite. Holds. Just. The smell clung. Ozone and burnt metal, the perfume of defiance. Reinforce the baffles tomorrow. Double the buffers. She's not done. Peterson shook his head, but there was a ghost of a smile. You're madder than Pappy Boyington. But damn if it doesn't sing. Dawn crept gray through the portholes. The first bosun's pipe wailing reveille. Mercer covered the mods with a tarp, tools scattered like battlefield leavings. As Peterson slipped away to his rack, Mercer lingered, hand on the warm barrel. If it survives the test, it'll survive me. Dawn briefings on the Essex were rituals of the damned, charts unrolled on folding tables, coffee bitter as quinine, the air thick with cigarette haze and the faint rot of yesterday's chow. Commander Bixby stood at the head, pointer wrapping the acetate overlay. Rabaul's radar sights, 0 dispersal patterns, a fresh convoy report, Japanese destroyers probing the slot from Bougainville. Blue flight launches at 06:15. Strike the lead, Ken. 500-pounders on the bridge. Green flight, top cover. Expect Cap, 15-plus bandits. Weather's Kavu, but watch the deck. Zeros like to hug it. Mercer sat in the back row, flight bag at his feet, eyes on the bulkhead clock. His Corsair waited below, tarp peeled back in the hangar frenzy, the twin muzzles oiled and shrouded under a false cowl panel. Peterson had patched the cracks overnight, welds filed smooth, hydraulic lines swapped from a spare Avenger gear. She'll hold, Mercer told himself, but the ground test echoed, that bone-deep boom, the frames protest like a ship cracking on coral. Bixby rapped it. Questions? No? Saddle up. The squadron spilled onto the deck, wind-whipping flight suits like flags in surrender. Mercer claimed his bird last, climbing the wing ladder with the ease of muscle memory. The cockpit enveloped him, leather seat worn to his shape, stick wrapped in friction tape. He scanned the gauges. Oil pressure steady at 80, RPM idle at 1,000. The false panel hid the cannon's bulk. But he felt them. 450 pounds of heresy tugging the nose down. He trimmed the elevators forward 2 degrees, compensating the shift. Porpoise on launch. Easy does it. Peterson was at the intake, final torque on a spark plug. He glanced up, eyes shadowed under his cap. She's grumpy, Ray. Test hopper solo. Low pass over the beach. No traffic. If she bites... He jerked a thumb aft, toward the ready room where Bixby briefed reserves. Mercer flashed a grin, thin as a blade. She bites. I bite back. The starter cart whined, props spinning lazy circles before catching with a cough bark. The double wasp thundered to life. 2,000 horses straining the chains. Exhaust stacks belched blue smoke, the deck vibrating under the blast. Mercer ran the mags, left, right, both, smooth. Flaps 20 degrees, canopy latched. Green lead, clear. The catapult officer's flags snapped down. Steam hissed, the shuttle slamming forward. Mercer firewalled the throttle. Carb heat off, mixture rich, and the world blurred to acceleration. The Corsair lurched, nose heavy, gear compressing as the stroke peaked. For a heartbeat she hung prop clawing air, the deck dropping away, then lift. Mercer eased back on the stick, bird climbing shallow at 120 knots. No porpoise, no snap roll, just a steady haul into the gold-streaked sky. Holds. He banked left, formation joining 4 Corsairs and finger 4 Dauntlesses trailing low. Radio crackled. Green flight, wheels up. Climb to Angels 12. The strike package pushed east, sun at their backs, toward Rabaul's sulphurous haze. Mercer led loose, scanning the horizon, cumulus towers boiling at 20,000, the sea a hammered sheet below. His mind mapped vectors. 0 climb rate, 3,000 feet per minute, turn radius 600 feet at 200 knots. They'll come from the sun, low and fast. The false cowl warmed under his thigh, cannon silent but pregnant with promise. One burst, that's all it takes. Radar pinged at 50 miles out, bogies bearing 09U, Angels 3, 18 contacts. Bixby from the Essex, green, vector 120, bombers push. The Dauntlesses droned on, Bombay's yawning. Mercer throttled up to 2,400 RPM, Corsair surging ahead. Tally, 12 o'clock low, 20 miles, zeros full strength. The enemy resolved, specs swelling to Sakura-painted fighters, wings flashing as they wove screen for the convoy. The merge was biblical. Zeros scattered high and low, a swarm splitting the formation like chaff. A Dauntless took a 20mm through the cowl, pilot bailing as the plane arrowed into the drink. Mercer broke right, stick hard over 4Gs compressing his guts. Green 2 my 6, Fox 3. His standard 50s, wing-mounted spares left untouched, barked a deflection shot, tracers arcing wide. The lead 0 jinked inside, cannons traversing. Shells zipped past, close enough to rattle the canopy frame. Mercer hauled back, Corsair looping tight, blacking out the edges of vision. Now, he leveled at 8,000 feet, the 0 filling his sight, 200 yards, closing fast. No time for wing guns. He flipped the master arm, click, and squeezed the trigger. Unauthorized, unforgivable. The shredder awoke. Twin muzzles spat fire, a 2-second apocalypse that drowned the engine's roar. Boom, boom, boom. Not gunfire, but ordnance. Shells hammering out at 700 cyclic, each impact a seismic event. The recoil hit like a depth charge. Nose yanking skyward 15 degrees, torque twisting the airframe left despite the buffers. Mercer fought it. Stick shoved forward, right rudder jammed, left aileron to counter the roll. The cockpit convulsed, gauges shattering in their mounts, altimeter tumbling like a drunk. Vibration sang through the bones. A chainsaw buzz that numbed his fingers, cracked the armored glass overhead into a starburst. Oil pressure spiked to 120, warning lights strobing red. Tearing. Right now. But the 0 didn't evade. The burst converged at 250 yards, 60 shells and 2 heartbeats, high explosive incendiary rounds punching through the cowl like hot knives through silk. Fabric shredded, engine nacelle erupting in a chain of fireballs. The pilot's arms windmilled once, visible through the canopy, then the bird disintegrated, wings folding inward, fuselage cartwheeling into the sea in a geyser of foam and flame. One down. Splash one. Mercer didn't whoop. He wrestled the beast back, throttle idle to bleed speed, wings level at 180 knots. The frame groaned, a deep creak from the longerons like ice cracking underfoot. Smoke wisped from the cowl seams, the smell of scorched hydraulics seeping through the vents. Holds, barely. 2 more Zeros peeled in, bracketing his tail. A high pounce, low slash. Braking left. Cover me. Green 2's voice spiked, but the wingman overshot, tangled in his own turn. The low Zero closed to 100 yards, cannons winking. Tracers stitched Mercer's port wing. Ping-ping, puncturing the aileron. Fabric fluttering like a banner of surrender. He snap-rolled right, G-forces graying the world, then pulled into a split S. Upside down, blood pooling in his boots, he reacquired, Zero fat and slow in the 6 o'clock. Again, trigger pull. The shredder bucked harder this time, buffers compressing with a squeal, hydraulic fluid jetting past his knee in a warm spray. The airframe twisted, crack, a longeron brace giving way, the stick shuddering in his grip like a live wire. Vision tunneled, the enemy plane ahead, then nothing but fire. Shells raked the Zero from prop to tail, igniting the wing tanks in a whoosh of avgas. It tumbled end over end, pilot ejecting into the slipstream, a silk flower blooming against the pyre. Mercer rolled out at 4,000 feet, sweat stinging his eyes, canopy fogging from ragged breaths. The radio howled chaos. Bomber hit, ejecting. Green 3 break. Another Dauntless spiraled down, trailing smoke. But the Zeros wavered. Lead element shattered, the rest milling like smoke and wind. Mercer's burst had bought seconds, turned the tide. Reform on me. Push the bombers through. He climbed shallow, nursing the bird, RPM at 2200, mixture lean to cool the cowl. The damage mounted. Port aileron sluggish, trim tabs fighting the torque bleed. A third Zero lunged from the clouds, opportunistic cannons barking. Mercer anticipated, barrel rolled left, thud-thud, shells clipping the tail boom, spars splintering. He countered with a deflection, Shredder's third roar. Recoil this time was intimate, the seat slamming his spine, a rivet popping free to plink off the panel. The burst clipped the Zero's gear strut. Enough. The enemy veered, trailing fire, diving for the deck in a desperate flat scissors. 4 minutes in, and the furball thinned. Bombers droned over the convoy, eggs tumbling into wakes. Zeros disengaged, scattering north, 6 splashdowns radioed, Mercer's 3 the fattest. He circled the strike, high cover, the sea below a mosaic of oil slicks and debris, fought the machine, fought the sky. The Corsair answered sluggish now, a wounded animal but alive. Peterson's voice broke through on guard freak, faint from the Essex. Lead, this is Wrench, deck's hot, RTB Vector 270. Mercer keyed the mic, voice steady as plum. Copy, green flight, feet wet in 5. Descent was ginger, gear down at 150, flaps incremental to avoid torque twist. The carrier grew from a speck to a steel raft, arrestor wire glinting. He trapped clean, hook snagging, engines spooling down in a whine. The deck rushed up, then stopped. Crew swarmed, yellow jerseys blurring. Mercer popped the canopy, acrid smoke billowing out, cordite and ozone, the scent of survival. Bixby was there first, face thunderous under the wind. What the hell was that, Mercer? 3 confirmed, burst patterns like a destroyer broadside. Ordnance says you didn't file for 20s. Mercer swung down, boots hitting deck, legs jelly from the G's. He met the CO's eyes, no apology in them. Filed for results, sir. Got him. Peterson pushed through, eyes on the nose, false panels scorched, muzzles peeking like guilty secrets. She held Ray, cracked but held. The squadron landed in, debrief buzzing. Zeros routed, convoy crippled, 2 bombers saved. Whispers spread, Mercer's bird growled different, louder, meaner. As the sun climbed, Mercer lingered by his plane, fingers tracing the buckled cowl. The sky stretched empty now, Rabaul's smoke a distant smudge. Didn't fall. He exhaled, the weight lifting fractionally. The enemy did. Debriefs were supposed to be catharsis, smoke breaks and tallies etched on blackboards, the squadron's pulse slowing from combat revs. But Mercer's cornered him like a depth charge in a dry dock. The room smelled of celluloid burn and stale sweat, the projector clacking through the final frames. A Zero's canopy shattering under invisible fists, debris blooming like ink in water. 3 kills, confirmed by wingmen and radar plots. Whispers rippled. What the hell did he throw at him? but no one named it. Not yet. Commander Bixby killed the reel with a slap, the bulb popping to white. He turned slow, mustache twitching like a fuse. The squadron froze. 8 pilots in sweat-stiff flight suits, helmets piled on chairs like discarded shells. Mercer, aft bulkhead, now. Ray pushed up, chair scraping linoleum. Eyes followed, curious, not condemning. Green 2, a fresh ensign named Hale, mouthed, "What gives?" Mercer shrugged it off, threading past the coffee urn to the CO's stateroom door. Bixby waited inside, a yeoman at the desk shuffling papers that smelled of mimeograph ink. The door clicked shut, sealing them in a 10 by 12 box of teak and tension. Bixby didn't sit. He leaned on the chart table, fingers drumming a Morse rhythm, dash dot dash. Gun footage doesn't lie, Ray. Burst density like that? Not 50s. Not even if you mag dump the belts. Talk. Mercer stood easy, parade rest, but his mind raced vectors. Recoil loads, weld strengths, the creak of longerons under fire. Tell him. Or lose it all. Twin 20mm, sir. Hispano M2s, nose mount. Peterson and I fabbed it last night. Reinforced trunnions, hydraulic dampers, fired 3 bursts, 120 rounds total. Zeros didn't weave out of it. Bixby's face didn't crack, but his eyes did, widening a fraction, the tell of a man recalculating odds. He lit a Chesterfield, the match flare carving shadows on the bulkhead maps. Rabaul's arcs, convoy tracks now crossed with red X's. Christ, Lieutenant, you bypassed ordnance protocols, pulled ordnance from the scrap log without a chit, and flew an untested mod into a hot Cap. That's not initiative, that's a Article 92. Dereliction. Could be 92 and 94 if we stretch to mutiny. Captain's mast at minimum. Court if Buord pushes. The words landed like 20mm impacts, methodical, shredding certainties. Mercer felt the deck tilt, not from swells, but the pull of consequence. Court-martial. Grounded. Or worse, reassigned to stateside ferrying, watching the war from clipboards. Keegan's empty spot flashed, chocks unmoved, a ghost in the launch cycle. Sir, it worked. 3 kills, bombers through clean. Without it, we'd have lost the package. The gap's real. Zeros close faster than we can cycle 50s. This closes it. Bixby exhaled smoke toward the vent, gray tendrils coiling like contrails. Worked this time. What about next? That bird's frame stressed, gun cams show yaw at 12 degrees per burst. 1 hard turn at 5Ds, and the nose folds like origami. You're not a test jock anymore, Ray. You're combat. One man's gamble doesn't rewrite the book. He paused, tapping ash into a tray etched with the Essex's Kielson number. Captain's been briefed. Wants you in the wardroom at 1600. MPs'll escort. Pack your kit. Mercer nodded once, throat tight as a feed jam. Pack it. Like it's over. He turned for the door, boot heels muffled on the deck plate. Bixby's voice stopped him cold. Ray, off record, you did what the engineers couldn't. Buord's been chasing nose cannons since 43, jams, torque, the works. Yours flew, saved asses today. The CO's hand clamped his shoulder, grip like a vice weld. But the Navy eats its young. Fight smart. The door hissed open, spilling Mercer into the corridor. The squadron milled outside, Hale bouncing a 50 casing between palms. Skipper ride you hard, Lieutenant. Those bursts looked like you hosed him with a fire hose. Laughter rippled, brittle as the cracked canopy glass. Mercer forced a grin. Just brass, kid. Standard load. But the lie sat heavy, heavier than the mod's 450 pounds. Word spread faster than flak. By chow, the mess deck buzzed. Deckhands swapping tails in the slop line, pilots in the wardroom sketching burst patterns on napkins. Peterson cornered him at the scuttlebutt, filling a mug with water gone brackish. Heard the CO's hot, MPs sniffing the hangar, found the crate shards. Your bird's on the lift, getting peeled like an onion. The chief's eyes darted, voice low under the clatter of trays. Worth it? Mercer sipped coffee that tasted of rust. Bluff's laugh. 3 zeros in the drink. Yeah. Every round wrench. The wardroom at 1600 was a court without robes. Captain Elias Hawthorne at the head table, a bull of a man with a Guadalcanal limp and a stare that peeled paint. Flanking him the exec, a JAG lieutenant with a binder of regs, and Bixby, silent as a briefed witness. MPs flanked the hatch, white helmets like mushrooms in the overhead light. Mercer entered crisp, summer whites pressed, cover tucked under arm, saluted sharp. Lieutenant Mercer, reporting as ordered, sir. Hawthorne didn't rise, just gestured to a chair that creaked under him. At ease. We've got gun cam, eyewitness, and a hangar full of evidence. Twin 20s, unauthorized. Explain yourself, son. His voice was gravel over steel, the kind that briefed admirals on sinkings. Mercer stood, words measured like aiming points. "Permission to speak freely, Captain." "Granted, but facts first." He laid it out. The gap, Tegan's jam, the napkin math. The night's work, torch cuts, weld beads, the ground tests boom that crack glass and souls. The flight, recoil like a mule, but kills clean. "It wasn't mutiny, sir. It was Nacero's own the weave because we hesitate. This ends that." The Jag scribbled, pen scratching like claws. Hawthorne's steepled fingers, scarred from flight deck burns. "Admirable, reckless." Bjord's memo last month, nose cannon integration non-viable for F4U airframe. Recoil exceeds design by 300%. You ignored it. Flew it. Risked the bird, the squadron. He slid a folder across, photos from the hangar lift, cowl peeled, trunnions gleaming, cracks spidering the firewall like lightning veins. "This plane's a write-off. Mod stripped by 1800. You're confined to quarters pending mast." Bixby shifted, boot tapping under the table. Mercer caught it, and held his tongue. The exec cleared his throat. "Worse, Lieutenant, if that mod failed midair, debris could have fouled the deck. Chain reaction, planes lost, men dead. Navy can't afford lone wolves." The air thickened, fans whirring futile against the press. Mercer met Hawthorne's gaze, unflinching. "Lone wolf, or the pack's fang?" "With respect, sir, the Zeros aren't waiting for memos. Rabaul's got 200 birds fueled. Next strike without this? We lose more than one plane." Hawthorne leaned forward, the table groaning. Silence stretched, broken only by the hull's distant thrum. Then a knock, sharp, insistent. The yeoman cracked the door, whispered to the exec. Papers rustled. A radioman's chit passed hand to hand. Hawthorne scanned it, brows knitting. Intel flash from Pearl. Japanese buildup. Carrier air wings staging for counterstrike. Essex in the slot. Multiple bogies projected. The room exhaled collective. Bixby's boot stopped. Hawthorne folded the chit, eyes on Mercer. "Your timing's biblical, Lieutenant. That mod's under wraps, but reports, they're circulating. Admirals in Noumea want details. Burst math doesn't lie." He paused, the Jag's pen hovering. "Mass tomorrow, but tonight, stand by. War waits for no court." Dismissed, Mercer stepped into the corridor, MPs peeling off like shadows. Bixby caught him at the ladder, voice a murmur under the hum. "You rattled him, Ray. Hawthorne's no fool. Saw the footage. Whispered to the exec, boys got brass. Buy time. Peterson's stalling the strip down. Says the welds need further eval." Mercer gripped the rail, knuckles white. The deck sloped below, Corsair spotted like hounds at leash. "Time, for what?" "Won't matter if they ground me, sir. Zeros don't read regs." Bixby clapped his back, firm. "They will now. Your story's out, pilots talking, chiefs logging anomalous performance. Bjord can't ignore splash counts." He glanced aft, where the horizon bruised purple. "Fight's not over the gun, it's over the why." Evening fell heavy, the mess deck a cauldron of rumor. Hale slid in beside Mercer, tray loaded with mystery meat. "Words, you're the wizard, sir. That nose job, rumor says it chews Zeros like chow-line steak." Laughter bubbled, but eyes were sharp, hope edged with hunger. Peterson joined later, under the stars, leaning on the rail amid the sizzle of deck vents. "Crew's buzzing, Ray. Even the gunners say if it shreds like you say, sign 'em up." Hawthorne's yeoman slipped me a note, hold the bird intact. Eval purposes. The chief lit up, smoke trailing into the night. "You're buying a fleet's worth of doubt." Mercer stared at the Black Sea, phosphors dancing in the wake. Tegan's voice ghosted. "Tell Mary, cut short. Not again." The weight lifted fractionally, the mod not buried but breathing. Reports spreading like fire in dry grass. One bird, one truth. Dawn would bring mast, maybe chains. But tonight, the sky waited, empty and expectant. Bixby's whisper echoed. You did what they couldn't. Orders bent if not broken. Yet, alarms split the dark, klaxon wail, red lights strobing the deck. Scramble. Bogies inbound, early Capt peeling off Rabaul. Mercer bolted for the ready room, heart slamming. Bixby at the chart, 8 bandits, low and fast, green flight, launch now. His eyes locked on Ray's. Your bird. Take it. The hangar doors groaned open, the shredder hauled to the catapult, muzzles gleaming under deck floods. Crew swarmed. Peterson at the cowl, final torque. Mercer climbed in, the cockpit a familiar vice, gauges whispering lies of calm. Throttle set, mags checked. The false panel was gone now, cannons naked, drums loaded fresh. One more. Launch officer's flags dropped, steam hissed. Acceleration crushed him back. Climbing into the fray, radio alive with vectors, Mercer keyed the mic. Green lead, airborne. Let's close the gap. The Zeros loomed on radar, silhouettes against the moon. Orders be damned. Equip the fleet. 5 days blurred into a gauntlet of probes and feints, Zeros nipping at the Essex's flanks like barracuda, testing the carrier's cap without committing. Mercer's mast hung suspended, a sword over the wardroom table. Hawthorne's verdict delayed by incoming dispatches, Buord teletypes stacking like cordwood. The shredder stayed airborne, a ghost in the rotation, 3 sorties logged under eval flights, Peterson's welds holding with spit and prayers. Kills mounted, 4 more, bursts carving zeros from the weave like a hot blade through silk. Whispers turned to roars in the mess. Mercer's got the devil in his nose. Bixby turned blind eyes, squadron slots filling with volunteers itching for the mod's secrets. But Rabaul stirred. April 20th dawned with a radio man's gasp. Japanese carrier air wing, Shokaku and Zuikaku ghosts, or so intel swore, staging 200 miles northwest, funneling fighters through the fortress's fields. Recon helldivers returned hold, photographers' plates showing deck loads. 80 Zeros, 40 Vals, the works. Essex was the anvil, the assault, the hammer. Bixby briefed at 400, voice a grindstone on steel, full strike. 24 Dauntlesses, 12 Avengers on the carriers. Air wing launches of 5:30-16 Corsairs top cover, Mercer leads green and blue flights. 8 birds. Bogies projected 60+. Deck's yours, Ray. Make it count. Mercer nodded, coffee mug warm in his grip, the rooms hum a chorus of fatigue. 8 against 60. The gap yawns wide. His bird waited on the catapult, cowl taped over fresh cracks, drums loaded to 180 rounds, 3 bursts, no more. The frame whispered warnings, longerons fatigued, aileron hinges binding from torque scar. 1 mission, end it. Squadron mates clapped his back as they spilled topside. Hale grinning fierce, Peterson's nod a talisman. She's purring, Lieutenant, just don't make her roar too long. The launch was frenzy under floodlights, engines barking in cascade, props washing the deck in prop wash gales. Mercer's Corsair slotted first, catapult shuttle clanging home. He ran the ritual, mags hot, flaps 10, trim set for the heavy nose. The flags dropped, steam cracked like a whip. Acceleration pinned him, bird leaping into the black, joining the swarm climbing east. 16 Corsairs in 2 echelons, bombers trailing low, silhouettes against the pearl horizon. Radio discipline tight, green lead, feet dry in 10, climb Angels 15. Dawn broke mid-climb, sun a blood orange slicing the clouds. Radar vectors sharpened. Bandits 40 miles, bearing row 60, Angels 8, massive 50+. Mercer keyed the mic, voice steady as the stick in his palm. Flights, this is lead, finger 4 loose, throttles military, tally and engage. The formation shattered into pairs, Corsairs diving to meet the tide. Zeros poured in, low from the deck, high from the cirrus, a silver blizzard, sun glinting off cowlings like bayonets. The merge hit at 10,000 feet, a storm of geometry and lead. Zeros swarmed the bombers, 20mm shells blooming orange, a Dauntless's wing crumpling in slow motion. Mercer broke high right, 5Gs graying the edges, Shredder's weight dragging the turn. Green 2, anchor my 6, Fox 3. Hale's 50s chattered, raking a trailing 0, but the enemy jinked inside, a classic Immelman snap. Mercer leveled, sight pipper centering the leader, a veteran bird, red Hinomaru scarred from prior scraps, 300 yards. Closing fast, breathe. He armed the twins, click, and pulled. The shredder's voice was Armageddon. A 3-second burst, 90 rounds fused into a lance of fire, muzzle cycling at 700 RPM, shells whispering death at Mach 2.5. Recoil slammed home, nose vaulting 20 degrees, airframe twisting counterclockwise with a screech of protesting metal. Mercer countered brutal, full right rudder, stick jammed forward, left aileron biting to arrest the roll. The cockpit rebelled, armored glass shattering in a cascade of diamonds, wind howling through the breach, hydraulic gauges spiking red, fluid sheeting the panel in black rain. The stick bucking like a marlin on line, vibration numbing his arms to the elbows. Tearing. Gods, it's tearing. A longeron brace snapped, crack, the sound a gunshot in his skull, fuselage flexing like a bowstring drawn too taut. But the Zero didn't dance. The burst converged surgical, high explosive shells punching through the engine block, incendiary tracers igniting the radial in a corona of flame. The pilot's hands flew up, silhouetted, futile. Then the bird erupted, wings shearing off in a cartwheel of debris. Chunks pelted Mercer's canopy, tick-tick. harmless confetti. Splash 2. 4 more zeros wheeled in response, pincer tight. Too high, too low, bracketing the formation. Hale's voice spiked. Lead, braking, taking fire. A burst clipped Green 2's tail, fabric shredding. Mercer hauled left, Corsair groaning under the strain, port aileron lagging like a wounded limb. Fight it. Fight her. He climbed into the high pair, sun at his back, Pipper locking the trail bird at 400 yards. Second burst, 2 seconds, 60 rounds. The mule kicked harder, torque yawing 15 degrees, buffers bottoming out with a thud that rattled his teeth, exhaust stacks belching flame backward, scorching the tail surfaces. The frame answered with betrayal, a firewall seam splitting, rivets popping like champagne corks, the entire nose vibrating in sympathetic fury. Oil pressure fluttered to 0, warning horn blaring over the roar. One more. Just one. Vision tunneled to the target, shells stitching the Zero's belly, fuel tanks rupturing in a blue whoosh. It plummeted, spinning, pilot bailing into the slipstream, a dark speck against the pyre. Splash 4. The low pair closed opportunistic, cannons traversing. Shells walked up Mercer's starboard wing, thunk-thunk, puncturing the tank, avgas venting in a misty plume. He snap-rolled inverted, blood rushing to his head, then pulled a split S that blacked him out for 2 beats. Leveling at 6,000, the lead low Zero filled the cracked glass. 150 yards, fat in the pipe. Now. Third burst, the last full drums. 4 seconds of hell, 120 rounds expended in a blink. Recoil was cataclysm. The nose wrenched skyward 25 degrees, airframe shuddering as if in seizure. The stick tore from his grip, slamming the panel. A main spar groaned, buckling under the torque, the wings flexing visibly like sails in a gale. Canopy frame twisted, wind screaming through gaps, the altimeter spinning wild, up, down, meaningless. End it. End me if you have to. The Zero vaporized. Shells converged at 100 yards, shredding the cockpit, engine, everything in a chain of detonations that lit the sky like magnesium flares. The wreckage fountained outward, peppering the formation, one fragment shearing Hale's antenna. Splash 6. Mercer released the trigger, the sudden silence profound, wind howl, engine mutter, his own ragged breath. The shredder cycled empty, breeches smoking, the cockpit a ruin, glass gone, gauges dead, hydraulic stickiness coating his flight suit. The plane flew by wire now, instinct and trim tabs, a wounded beast lurching south. Below, the tide turned. Bombers punched through the shattered screen, eggs tumbling onto the carrier decks. Shokaku's flight island crumpling under 1,000-pounders, secondary blasts rippling the flight deck. Zeros milled, leaderless, the weave broken. Squadron voices crackled triumph. Lead, splash 2. Blue 3, confirm. Decks burning. Mercer circled high, loose figure 8, scanning the furball. His 8 birds held, losses light, 2 wingmen nursing holes but airborne. The enemy broke, scattering north in 1s and 2s, Rabaul calling them home. But the assault wasn't done. Radar pinged anew, reinforcements. 14 Zeros clawing up from the deck, fresh from the fields, vectored on the retreating bombers. Green lead, bandits reforming, 12 o'clock low, 20 contacts. Bixby's voice cut in from the Essex, edged. Push 'em, Ray. Cover the birds home. Mercer firewalled the throttle, what was left of it, Corsair surging despite the drag, fuel streaming from the punctured wing. Empty drums, 50s only. He led the dive, 8 spears against the wave, Hale on his wing. I've got your back, sir. Let's finish it. The second merge was butcher's work. Zero's dove on the straggling Avengers, Val's trailing like vultures. Mercer led the charge, 50s hammering a deflection that winged the lead, fabric shredding, but the enemy held. Hale splashed 1 clean, tracers converging. Mercer weaved through the press, evading a 20mm burst that vaporized his starboard flap. A Zero latched his 6 cannons winking. Shells raked the fuselage, crump, holding the cockpit sill inches from his boot. He broke hard left, G-forces squeezing black spots, then reversed into the trail. His burst caught the pursuer broadside, 50s chewing the tail to splinters. It tumbled, spiraling into the sea. 7. The clock ground, 2 minutes of chaos, turns bleeding airspeed, ammo belts thinning. Zeros pressed, but the spear point held. Mercer's vector breaking their cohesion, squadron mates picking off the flanks. 8, 9, 10 splashes radioed, debris painting the waves black. A final Zero lunged at a limping Dauntless, cannons hot. Mercer intercepted, low and dirty, 200 knots in the merge. His remaining 50s barked dry, last rounds. The Zero flashed past, untouched, banking for another pass. No. He hauled back, looped tight, the damaged frame protesting with creaks like breaking bones. Upside down at 3,000 feet, he reacquired. Belly shot point blank. Trigger pull. Clicks. Empty. The Dauntless's pilot anticipated, yanking into a skid. The Zero overshot, exposed. Hale's guns finished it, tracers marching up the cowl, engine blooming fire. For you lead, splash 12. The furball dissolved, Zeros fleeing, bombers feet wet and safe. Mercer climbed shallow, bird wallowing now, engine coughing on the lean mix, wing leaking blue. Radio chorus, green flight, RTB, good hunting. Kills tallied, 20 across the squadron, Mercer 6 the crown, confirmed by cams and eyes, a minute-by-minute erasure of the sky's threats. Descent was meditation. Throttle eased, gear down ginger, the Essex a distant raft swelling to heaven. He trapped heavy, hook biting deep, the deck arresting with a jolt that shivered the frame. Crew swarmed, Peterson first, face split in awe, hands probing the ruin, canopy gone, nose buckled, spar visible through the splits. You flew her home, Ray, a sieve, but home. Mercer climbed down, legs buckling on the ladder, the deck cool under his palms. Smoke trailed from the vents, the shredder cooling with sighs and ticks. Bixby pushed through, logbook in hand. 20 bogeys down, carriers gutted, Essex stands because of this. He gripped Mercer's arm, eyes fierce. Masts off the table. Admirals want your prints on every bird. Mercer straightened, salt crusting his face, the wind off the bow carrying ozone and victory. The sun crested full, gilding the formation, reforming overhead. Tore the sky open. The gun didn't tear the plane apart, it tore the sky open. Victory's afterglow faded fast on the Essex. The deck littered with spent brass and crumpled flight logs, the sea a graveyard of oil slicks stretching to the horizon. The April 20th strike had gutted the Japanese counter. Shokaku listing, flight deck a pyre visible from the picket destroyers. 20 Zeros confirmed in the drink, the rest limping home to Rabaul's craters. Essex stood unscathed, her air wing intact, the squadron's tally etching legends on the ready room bulkhead. But for Mercer, the calm-down was a vice. Medics stitching the gash above his eye, a corpseman probing ribs bruised purple from the arrestor jolt. He sat on a crate amid the hangar din, flight suit stiff with dried hydraulic fluid, watching the disassembly like a man at his own autopsy. Peterson worked the torch, sparks fountaining as he severed the final brace. The twin Hispano barrels slid free with a clank, cradled in a sling like exhumed relics. Easy, boys. She's earned better than the scrap chute. The chief's voice carried under the welder's buzz, eyes meeting Mercer's across the 20 feet of deck plate. No words needed. The math was done. 180 rounds fired, frame integrity at 62%, longerons weeping stress fractures like battle scars. Bixby arrived at 0900, Hawthorne at his elbow, the captain's limp echoing off the bulkheads. The CO carried a manila folder stamped eyes only board, edges curled from the teletype drum. At ease, Lieutenant. Docs clear you for light duty? Bixby's tone was neutral, but his grip on the folder betrayed it, white-knuckled like holding a live fuse. Mercer rose, wincing as the stitches pulled. Clear, sir. Ribs taped. Ready for debrief. Hawthorne grunted, gesturing to the folder. Debriefs for heroes. You're grounded, effective now. Birds a total, mods confiscated for stateside eval. Buord's directive, all non-standard ordnance to Pearl priority air. No further flight authorization pending inquiry. He slid photos across a workbench. The shredder's nose peeled like a banana skin, trunnions bent, recoil buffers compressed to pancakes. You flew a miracle, Mercer, saved the task force. But miracles don't rewrite manuals. Not without cost. The words landed soft, but they pinned him, grounded like a prop with sheared teeth. Mercer traced a photo's crack line, the weld he'd laid at midnight now a fault. Cost. Bluff's empty rack. The gap closed, but at what? Sir, the design, reinforcements, dampers. It held through 20 kills. Copy it. Field it. Zeros won't wait for inquiries. Bixby shifted, mustache twitching. They know, Ray. Folder's got your sketches. Peterson smuggled them out last night. Board's engineers are en route via PBY. Quiet like. No credit line, but it'll seed the spec. He paused, voice dropping to a bulkhead murmur. You're the why, not the who. Navy's way. Hawthorne nodded once, crisp. Confined to base, no flights. Inquiry boards you for innovation protocol breach. Could be reprimand, could be reassigned. Test command at Patuxent if you're lucky. The captain's eyes held no malice, just the grind of gears. Admirals balancing splash counts against regs. Dismissed? Pack light. Mercer saluted, boot heels clicking on the grating. The hangar swallowed him as he left, torches hissing final cuts, the shredder's frame settling on blocks like a gutted fish. Peterson caught him at the hatch, rag twisted in his fist. They're crating her for Pearl, Ray. Barrels to the lab. Your math? It'll birth something. Bet on it. The chief's grip was iron, a handshake that said we bent the rules. They bend slower. The days bled into salt air and paper stacks, inquiry transcripts in the wardroom, Mercer recounting the night's fab, torch angles, torque specs, the ground tests boom that cracked glass and opened eyes. No court-martial. Hawthorne's pull and the strike's glory bought leniency. Reprimand on the record. Unauthorized modification endangering airframe integrity. Grounded indefinite, reassigned stateside. Test pilot full circle but stripped of combat tabs. Squadron mates toasted him quiet in the mess, Hale pressing a 50 casing into his palm, engraved Shredder's fang. We fly your ghost, sir? Every burst. By May, the Essex pushed west. Rabaul bypassed in MacArthur's island hop. Mercer shipped out on a Liberty launch to Espiritu Santo, duffel light, the sea chopping whitecaps under a bruised sky. Bixby saw him off at the gangway, wind whipping the ensign. War's not done with you, Ray, or your gap. Right when you land. No more said, the launch chugged away, Essex shrinking to a gray silhouette, her decks alive with the next scramble. Stateside hit like a cold front. The Tucson River Naval Air Station, Maryland, summer 44, a blur of wind tunnels and clipboards. Mercer logged hours on stock Corsairs tweaking superchargers, but his mind stayed in the Bismarck, creak of longerons, the silence after recoil. Letters came sparse, Bixby noting squadron mods creeping in, single 20mm, dampened on select birds. Your math holds. Zeros scattering. Peterson's scrawl, crew calls it the Mercer Special. Unofficial. Pearl Harbor's labs worked silent. Buord engineers, slide rule men in bow ties, dissected the shredder's guts. Trunnion angles measured to microns, recoil data graphed in wax crayon. No memos named Mercer, reports redacted to field expedient prototype. But the seed took. Hydraulic buffers iterated, barrel sync refined, frame gussets standardized. By fall, test mules flew, P-51s first, then F-4Us off Quonset point. Cyclic rates climbed to 750 RPM, torque tamed to 800 foot-pounds. The AN M3 20mm cannon emerged in December 44. Hispano's fire rekindled, lighter, faster, nose mount ready. Standard fit for Hellcats and Corsairs by 45, rolling off Willow Run lines like grim prophecy. Mercer saw it first in a tech order, February 45, diagrams echoing his napkin, convergent bores, buffer schematics, no credit, just per Buord Spec 44-217. He folded the sheet, tucked it beside Keegan's last letter, tell Mary I love her. The words faded from salt, tore history, not the plane. The war ground on, Iwo, Okinawa, the shredder's kin carving zeros from the kamikaze swarms. Essex took hits, but her air wing endured, burst densities closing gaps, pilots coming home. VJ Day found Mercer at Pax River, test-hopping a stock F4U4, the Pacific a memory in newsreels. He mustered out 46, captain's bars pinned quiet, a desk job at Grumman waiting, civilian now, consulting on jets that drank kerosene like water. Married in 47, a girl from Annapolis with eyes like open sky. Kids came, Tom after Bluff, who flew Phantoms in Nam, Ray Jr., who built models of gull-winged ghosts. The whispers persisted, though. Squadron reunions in the 50s, black sheep vets trading yarns over rye. Remember Mercer's monster? Shredded him before they blinked. Bixby Gray at the temples, cornered him at one. 58, VFW Hall in San Diego, smoke thick as flack. Saw the AN-M3 plaque at the museum. Your buffers near as damn. They named the mount after some admiral. Figures. Mercer shrugged, beer warm in his hand. Figures. Admiral flew desk, I flew the gap. Peterson passed in 62, shrapnel finally claiming the lungs. His obit mentioned Guadalcanal, not the hangar nights. Hawthorne retired admiral, memoirs ghosted, the shredder a footnote in appendices. Ito, the Japanese ace who'd tangled early, underestimated once, splashed in a 45 weave. His logbook surfaced post-war, translated, enemy devil plane. Fire like God's wrath, no turn could evade. Decades layered like varnish, Mercer at 70, 86, tinkering in a garage workshop, scale Corsairs with brass cannons, firing blanks that popped like echoes. CNN looped Gulf War footage, F-14s with 20mm pods, lineage faint but true. My math, he'd mutter, polishing a barrel. Tom visited, phantoms retired, grandkids tugging sleeves. Dad, tell the gun story again, the one that shook the wings. He did, voice gravel now, the tail polished smooth. The jam, the torch, the boom that bent physics. No rage left, just the truth, unadorned. Sometimes the only way to survive war is to break what was never meant to bend. Ray Mercer slipped anchors in '99, pneumonia quick as a dive. Buried at Arlington, folded flag on the casket, no bugler for the forgotten. The plot simple. LT Raymond Mercer, USN, 1916–1999. Tested the sky. Squadron flew over, 4 Corsairs and missing man. Gull wings slicing clouds, vapor trails feathering salute. The legend outlived him, a vein in the ore of history. Museums mounted AM-3s now, placards noting, devolved from Pacific field mods. Pilots still whisper it in sim briefings, Mercer's shredder. Built belief. Tokyo archives hold Ito's pages, translated for scholars. Impossible gun. Sky feared the trigger. They said it would tear the plane apart. They were right, it tore history apart instead. If you believe forgotten innovators deserve their names remembered, subscribe for more untold World War II stories.